Trish said intro music is everything. Does that meet your expectations?
Yeah, I'm happy with that intro music. All right, so Statistics Canada's recent labor productivity report found that the average Canadian works roughly 40 hours a week. Now, for most of us in the audience, this is a really conservative number. I'm sure you're all thinking I should probably multiply that by 2, because research suggests that entrepreneurs actually put in roughly 52 hours. But for sake of argument, let's go with the conservative 40. Public holidays, 3 weeks of vacation, and variable factors aside, that's 1,920 hours a year. Now, that doesn't seem much at first glance, but when you look at what it amounts to in terms of the hours the average Canadian spends at work in their lifetime, that's 124,800 hours, assuming one formally retires by 65. So at the end of our lifetime, with the average life expectancy at 80, Canadians roughly spend 43 years, more than 50% of their life, at work. There's no denying that that's a lot of precious time. Now, not every day at work can be delightful and make you feel incredible, but how many of us here can unabashedly say that most of those 40 hours a week are filled with learning and emotions that make you feel empowered and enabled? Over the course of the next 2 days, we are going to be hearing from an incredible lineup of speakers on the challenges and opportunities with artificial intelligence across many facets of our life. The dialogue on this human-machine partnership is fascinating. In fact, in the context of the workplace, Dell Computers recently found in their Future of Work study that 82% of leaders that they surveyed across 17 countries believe that humans and machines will work together as integrated teams within the next 5 years. About a quarter of those respondents actually believe that that's happening today in less obvious and explicit ways. So what we're interested in is this question should probably go here. How might AI make those 43 years of our lives meaningful, safe, productive, and less mundane? And where do we start?
Merci. So we're Myplanet, and we are a software studio that is focused on the workplace. We've built business applications for a host of different types of companies over the past 10 years, mainly Fortune 50 companies. And these business applications have ranged from workforce management tools to conversational agents to solicit employee feedback, and then some really sector-specific stuff that help you run your data center better or deliver better healthcare. What we're really interested in is what the future of the software environment looks like when it comes to user experience. And as part of that, we're looking at the ways that technology can act on the behalf of employees. Hold on. There are different screens here, so I just want to orient myself. We've got this one, and my notes are showing for the last slide. That's handy. All right, so 4 principles to talk about in connection with what AI is all about. This is really disorienting. All right. OK, let's just look at this screen.
Yeah.
There's no notes on it. So we're going to follow a running HR scenario. This is actually an aggregate of a number of different experiences that we've had over the past, I'd say, year or two. So it's not actually representative of one company, but we wanted to bring them together into a bit of an archetype to help you understand some of the principles associated with actually implementing AI effectively in the workplace. There's some peculiarities about bringing AI into the workplace beyond something that you might encounter in the consumer context. So let's talk first about understanding your people.
Yeah. So rule number 1, understand your people. It seems like such an obvious thing to do, but in the midst of the AI race, it's often the first thing that organizations ignore. We're seeing organizations invest significant resources, time and money into the implementation of AI at work, only to find that their AI projects fail. There's even a term coined AI washing that describes this phenomenon where we're seeing AI being applied and marketed everywhere without a clear understanding of how, where, and why. So Don Norman, the author of The Design of Everyday Things, mentioned this quote. Sorry, there's a bit of a... that AI needs to accept human behavior the way it is, not the way we would wish it to be. But before we can accept human behavior and beliefs, we need to know what they are. This is a critical step in kind of implementing AI that will be adopted, accepted, and in turn successful. We can't work with assumptions, so I'm going to share a few ideas on a few things that we can broadly seek to understand as organizations. So universal fears and concerns. Understanding your employees' attitudes about AI is really important. It's important that we plan and design around it. Once you know what these attitudes are, you can ensure that you address these attitudes through the design and development of your AI project or through the communications around the release. Ooh, this is going a little crazy. Sorry. So
help?
Here's an amalgamation of some of the top concerns and fears that employees have around AI at work. They believe that automation is going to disrupt the quality of their relationships with their employees as well as their clients. And they're also worried that it'll disrupt their daily work habits and patterns that are difficult to unlearn. Secondly, they're worried that they'll lose a sense of control over their work and its outcomes. And AI at work to them means the pressure to upskill as well as new standards of measuring performance. They're worried they won't be relevant anymore or fall behind. Their concerns actually extend far beyond job elimination to concern over their roles evolving or their scope of role reducing, as well as access to limited enablement. But it's a valid concern, but a recent Capgemini study actually found that the future of work is not all that that employees think it is to be. There's actually a lot more of an increase in job opportunities alongside improved efficiency and service, which brings us to the concern around no communication or transparency. Organizations are doing a poor job of being transparent about their AI strategy, which includes transparency on roles evolving because of AI or tasks that will be replaced, and retraining initiatives, among other things. Not allowing your employees to look inside the black box further contributes to this vicious cycle of fear. And lastly, trust. So data warrants a presentation of its own, but every employee has a different stance with respect to their privacy comfort zone and expectation of privacy as well. Another thing to understand is your team composition and the generational differences that may exist. For the first time ever, we have 4 different generations in the workforce, and this means differences in level of technology acceptance, as well as interest in different kinds of technology. Kronos, a leader in workforce management software, recently conducted a study earlier this year with 420 employees across different countries and different generations, and found that baby boomers are actually far more selective in their use of technology. They're more interested in technology that will help them improve their daily lives and understand their needs, like assistive technology or connected intelligence, versus millennials on the other side, who really appreciate hyper-personalization and consistently have positive sentiments towards new technology. Now, there's certainly other human factors to take into consideration that can skew the acceptance and interest in technology, like culture or socioeconomic factors. But understanding these human differences improves an organization's chance of driving a successful engagement and efficiency within the workplace. Another important aspect is the understanding of their needs with respect to an evolving workplace and lifestyle. Innovation teams are more often than not focused on technology and not needs. Consequently, the lack of clarity around the value of the AI being implemented is actually a major barrier to its success. Let's look at our physical work environment alone. We've gone from these closed, one-model-fits-all cubicle farms to these open, collaborative, and personalized environments with illumination settings and shared desks and voice-enabled rooms. And these are all valued models and concepts because they're timely responses to growing employee demands and changing lifestyles. But these responses aren't perfect, and they continue to evolve. For example, with the introduction of shared desks, I know that a lot of people appreciate the collaborative environment that it provides, but many employees are also interested in reclaiming some of that privacy and just zoning out and doing some work. So how might we marry technology in the physical environment to address this? Our organizations are changing. We're seeing remote working models, virtual teams, a rise in self-directed learning, and a focus on wellness more than ever before. So it's really important to use this as inspiration to inform your AI implementation starting point.
OK, let's try this again. There we go. Awesome. So now that we're familiar with the user-centered design thinking thing that Tyler was talking about, you'll know that just because you make assumptions about your users doesn't mean they're necessarily right. It's really important to find an opportunity to have deep conversations with your employees to understand where their pain points are around the workplace, their workflows, but also about their attitudes related to artificial intelligence. So you want to find opportunities to have really in-depth conversations. You might want to triangulate some of the qualitative research you do with a larger scale survey to understand attitudes. Themes that you're seeing, how many and how much of those are actually represented in the company at large? What's the sense of scope? So let's talk about our running HR example. So in this case, we actually had conversations across a broad range of regions, tenures, and levels of seniority. Globally, we had about 30 conversations or so, and we started pulling out some interesting themes. We decided to run a survey as well with that employee group just so we could get a sense of whether or not those were maybe anomalous or if they were representative of reality across the board for all employees. And what we found was kind of interesting. So with respect to artificial intelligence, most of the employees were actually pretty open to the idea of automating different parts of their workflow, but they were really, really concerned about data privacy, both for the company but also for their individual confidential information. And then on the HR side, the struggle was that they felt the HR services being offered were really inconsistent, and the big problem was that they weren't really part of their workflow. So they really had to put in a lot of effort to seek out those services, and that was an issue. Now, traditionally and historically, the HR department hadn't been as willing to tackle that problem. It's pretty hard if you've got a company of 100,000 people to try and personalize the HR services for each individual employee's workflow. But that brings us to our second principle. Here we go, which is exploring new problem spaces. So practicing design thinking ensures that we don't get caught up in the hype storm around artificial intelligence and feel compelled to build all kinds of solutions to problems that nobody has. Definitely believe in that. But at the same time, there's a need for balance. Our belief is that it's possible to become tunnel visioned if you don't have a frame of reference for what's possible. And this happens all the time in design. It's something called cognitive bias. If I'm someone who designs a lot for and uses mobile devices a lot, and suddenly I'm introduced to voice interaction, I might not be able to think as creatively about what I can do with voice interaction as a result, because I'm filtering everything through the lens that I've experienced with my current type of technology. So to deal with this, we're big fans of what is called integrative thinking. And if you're not familiar with that, it's basically an approach to problem solving that allows us to hold two seemingly opposing ideas in our head and then find a way to reconcile them without abandoning one or the other. We apply integrative thinking to the worlds of technological potential and then also to the world of human needs and design thinking without dogmatically approaching one or the other. So the first step involved in this is to learn about all the various things that AI can do in your context in the workplace. Right? So go out and read about what's been done, try to understand where there's potential with the technology. This really boils down to understanding AI as a design material. And it's not that different than if you're a designer, learning what code is all about. So you can stimulate more creative thinking about a basic web application. So that's sort of a way to think of it. So once you feel fairly clear that the things that AI can do in your context make sense, then you want to put that list away and go back to the research that you've done with your employees. Right? Look for the very specific sore points that they have, the opportunities and the frustrations. And then what you're going to do is integrate them both. We use something called a mashup matrix, which is essentially where we filter technological capability through employee needs. We look at what's at the intersection. And by generating this matrix, we're able to elicit unconventional solutions to problems that maybe we didn't feel comfortable solving in the past. So here's an example. Maybe we're talking about onboarding. So maybe what we've seen from our employee research is that onboarding is too one-size-fits-all. It's not personalized enough. But historically, again, we were concerned about personalizing onboarding because we had 100,000 people that we had to do it for. So maybe we use artificial intelligence to predict onboarding needs so that we can have better communications within the first 30 days of an employee's tenure, right? Or maybe we use AI to generate insights about potential triggers or leading indicators of disengagement, right? Again, something that would be very onerous and very manual if we had to do it with our HR staff. Now, because data obviously plays such a key role in AI implementations, it becomes a key criterion for filtering down the different potential solutions and problems and the pairs of problems and solutions that we'll be able to tackle. The nice thing is that in a workplace context, you'll have unstructured and structured data, but a lot of it will be much more accessible than it might be in a consumer context because it's going to be related to the employee. And obviously, getting that information out of various HRIS systems, that sort of thing can be a bit difficult, but it is there. So going back to our case example, we worked with the HR group to understand how AI might support the delivery of better HR services. And again, going back to those pain points that we saw around inconsistency and a lack of workflow integration, what we realized is we had to narrow it down a bit. We decided to focus on feedback. That was a big thing that felt like it kind of happened outside of the employee's workflow. And at the same time, we looked at all of the different potential AI implementations around conversation to figure out how we might actually be able to use conversation to facilitate giving and receiving feedback as part of the employee's workflow.
Awesome. So on to principle 3. So if you're a company that wants to leverage AI but might not necessarily have billions of dollars to invest in it, unless it's core to your actual offering or unless the technology doesn't exist and it's not out there at all, make sure to leverage what already exists and utilize a strong technology partner to drive the implementation with you. Of course, AI is part of an interdisciplinary social context, so there are partners outside of technology that's really important to rely on when you're building AI for the workplace. But for sake of this topic, we're going to stick to technology partners. So technology partners bring quality, they bring speed, value, and simplicity to an implementation, and they also significantly reduce risk. It explains why we're seeing so many organizations have a preference towards embedded or packaged AI solutions rather than taking on a custom build. AI applications can also be extremely layered and Lego-like, which means organizations can leverage more than one specialized technology into an application and kind of seed it in and integrate it. We're seeing Fortune 500s from the work we're doing opt for both startup, emerging, and legacy technology partners. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for everyone. So what exactly are we leveraging when we say leverage what already exists? Let's break that down further. So firstly, you're able to directly benefit from the wealth of research and industry knowledge your partners have in their areas of expertise. There's a lot of discussion around the lack of diversity behind the design and development of AI, and partners often have a very unique way of bringing richness to that diversity of thought to both projects, initiatives, but also teams. Partners also have access to much more compute power than you likely do, which means you don't have to invest in tons of infrastructure to crunch your data. In addition, many partners have pre-trained models for common use cases, which saves you that time from training AI models from scratch. For the most part, technology partners manage maintenance and updates seamlessly, which means that typically that's been a huge cost for organizations with custom builds, where they have to rebuild every 2 to 3 years to make sure the solution is still relevant. But a lot of technology partners actually put the onus of that on themselves. Customization. So 5 years ago, there was definitely a time where off-the-shelf technology was synonymous with inflexible or conventional. But today, it's a very different landscape. And we're seeing how, even with off-the-shelf technology, customization is the standard. So there are different plans, modules, widgets, extensions that you can select specific to your organization's needs. In addition to that, there's also this ability to start with off-the-shelf and then work your way from it and build something that's completely custom for your organization. And lastly, talent leverage. AI implementations require talent that is extremely hard to find in-house for many organizations. So in the labor market, we definitely have a skills shortage of AI and ML scientists, engineers, architects, visualization designers. The numbers are growing, but it's still slow, steady, and relatively limited. So by working with partners, you're actually consuming so much more than a product. You're consuming this partner support ecosystem that comes with it and consists of different experts in their specialized domains, training and enablement, as well as support, which serves as a great short-term solution for that challenge that companies have around the massive investments required to get started with AI. Think about building your own AI partner ecosystem and be deliberate about how it's going to be, because a poorly thought out partner model can definitely hinder the success of your AI implementation. Earlier on in this section, I spoke a bit about AI being part of this interdisciplinary social context. And as a result of this, when we implement AI, your partner ecosystem is not going to look like a purely technology partner ecosystem. It demands stakeholders who are not just going to help you drive the implementation, but they're also going to help you manage the change. So your AI partner ecosystem is an integrated network of partners that you can build long-term, mutually beneficial relationships with. They help you reach and exceed your implementation goals. Their work and vision should also strongly complement your own. There must be a really strong human, business, and technology alignment. Every organization and function within an organization have different needs and rely on different partners because of that. So there can be multiple partner ecosystems consisting of both internal and external teams, and no two ecosystems look alike. So here's an example of a possible ecosystem. Yours might look completely different according to how your organization is structured. But it will likely include both those internal, external teams we were talking about, as well as partners outside of technology. So one example of a partner would be an AI research or lab partner. So RBC, Facebook, Adobe, AI labs are partners they all have in common, and these labs are closely affiliated with academic institutions with a wealth of advanced research and talent that they can leverage. Outside of labs, there are also delivery partners, and these are partners that actually help you drive the implementation from start to end, as well as with maintenance and support. Then there's AI training partners, so like in Integrate.ai for training AI-enabled solutions to really make sure that we're training the products for more natural and valuable interactions with the end user. And on the note of training, there should be a retraining and enablement partner specifically for the workplace, because retraining is an extremely important component of the dialogue on AI and something that will be covered in more depth over the course of the next 2 days. And lastly, think about what your AI governance looks like. So we've worked with organizations who have very different structures and methods to how they approach this. Some individuals have an AI committee consisting of champions across the organization in different functions. So you're getting perspectives from different lenses. And others opt for a team within the organization whose sole agenda is to sort of drive AI innovation and adoption within the organization. So that's something that's worth considering when you look at your own organizations. Taking it back to technology, here are some things to think about when it comes to identifying AI technology partners. AI can drastically impact your company culture, and trust is everything. Does your partner share the same values you do? For example, if you value transparency and your partner doesn't really let you know what's inside that black box, how are your employees going to feel about that? AI is all about data. In the context of the workplace, employee data is extremely sensitive and confidential. So does the partner fulfill your security and data storage requirements? We've worked with companies that actually simply refuse to use tools or partners that store employee data in the cloud. So that's a really critical consideration and something we think of a lot. Has the partner proven that their technology can actually work? So specifically for your workplace use cases. So believe it or not, we've actually had a couple of encounters with AI companies that use human labor behind the scenes to masquerade as being functioning AI sort of product companies. So it's really important to check whether the technology actually works and who's behind that and how that's working on the back end. And lastly, please don't pick partners that offer products with subpar user experience. It's one of the biggest problems with workplace software, and will kill your adoption rate, especially if the usability and accessibility is atrocious.
So we'll talk a little bit about how we applied the partner prompts, I guess, that Trish was describing. We wanted to help this particular company get started. So even at that very early point, we were trying to look at a partnership that would make sense for this company. We looked at a number of different organizations that offer pre-baked virtual agents. Many of them are very, very expensive. What we wanted to do was get started with a simple pilot, a simple prototype. And so we went with some of Google's open tool set. We landed on Dialogflow. It has lots of great integrations, very easy to access, and allows us to distribute the experience across a number of different devices. We integrated that with Skype for Business as a way, again, of bringing that idea of giving and receiving feedback into the employee's workflow. So our final principle is perhaps a little less specific to AI, but it's probably one of the most important in the context of AI, given the human impact. You know, relative to the other speakers that you're going to hear from, we're definitely not experts when it comes to building AI, but we are experts in the context of understanding how AI impacts user experience. And that's sort of what we're focusing on here from the employee experience lens. So to limit the potential impact of inevitable early failures if you're running a pilot, but also to acclimatize your employees to the idea that AI is part of their workflow or is part of their experience, one of the things that you can look at is running a series of small parallel initiatives that are linked back to a broader strategy, and then, most importantly, bringing the employees along for the ride. Ultimately, it's the institutional and the social blocks or constructs that are going to make or break a novel technology implementation. And I'd even go as far as to say the most important experience criteria for an AI implementation is actually trust, right? Building that sense of trust amongst the workforce if you're introducing AI. So a more obvious way of thinking about this, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with this concept, you can think of this as a lean startup initiative. So really this involves placing multiple small bets and linking them back to a broader vision that you have for the product or service you're trying to create, or in this case, the employee experience that you're trying to create. So how does this work? You can start with a series of diversified pilots. Don't try and automate your entire HR function or any other business function right out of the gate. Instead, you want to pick small bits and pieces of the employee experience that you'll be able to support with artificial intelligence in a way that actually achieves your business outcomes, but also empowers employees. And the key here is not to get scared off if some of these initiatives don't work. Likely they won't immediately, and the idea is that you can learn from those initiatives as you look to build out your broader vision. So part of learning involves studying usage, studying behaviors, being able to understand what that relationship between the human and the machine is actually like. And obviously, you might want to look at a broad metric like adoption, but it also makes sense to look at the key interaction touch points in whatever system it is that you're starting to introduce AI to. And specifically, that might be something like setting up the system, you know, if the employee has to give the system parameters, monitoring the system, or dealing with the system if there's an emergency or they need to take over. We've actually put these ideas together in a bit of a canvas, and credit where credit's due. This is based on research we've done, secondary research, our own experiences. It's also, the structure of the canvas is also based on ideas from Chris Nossel in the book, Designing Agentive Technology. Really, really good book. I promise I don't get kickbacks for advertising it, but definitely recommend it if you're interested in understanding how to think through the details of an AI-enabled product. The canvas is available online on our Medium account. So to keep things organized and strategic, again, you want to link each of these initiatives back to the broader strategy, and ultimately let the success of these individual initiatives determine where you invest further, right? So again, basic lean startup sort of stuff. So the benefit of starting small in many places is that you can limit the risk of wasted resources, obviously, but it can also reduce the risk of spooking your company. Let's say instead of taking this approach, you invested heavily in a single monolithic AI automation program, and that tanked hard, right? That's going to have a negative impact for the employees, but also probably for anyone that you're working with who might be approving your budget. So being able to look at these pilots is a good way to mitigate that as well. And it's also going to provide a great platform for involving your people.
So very quickly, now this is a non-technical but extremely critical step for the successful AI implementation. But it's really important to get ahead of any misconceptions and treat AI as a change management initiative and not a simple technology change or form factor. So it's really important to be mindful and also not blow things out of proportion. It's really important to also demystify the word. So I know Tyler earlier on today was talking about the language that we use around AI, and it's important to use language that clearly demonstrates the scope. It's easy to spook people given the context of media coverage and science fiction, but more than likely your first AI implementation from what we've seen will simply surface extra insights or automate part of a human process. It's important to have a practical discussion on AI. So how is AI going to change the way you work? Where will it help? How might employees already be using it? And how are you applying it to this given context and situation? Expose your employees to AI in increments and gradually, and remind them that AI is infrequently a monolithic robot coming to steal their jobs. And these days, it's more frequently or a slightly more convenient summary of data or automation of some of those more mundane tasks. Finally, in addition to the channels you've used to learn about employees and their behaviors, it's really important to define and promote a strong feedback loop before your application is live. So make your employees feel like they're not just a focus group, but actual active participants in the evolution of your AI implementation. And use their feedback to really understand the pace of change and how your employees are reacting and what they're comfortable with, and the depth of explanation that they expect around these AI implementations.
So just before we wrap up, just want to bring us back to our case example. So in the scenario where we were looking at bringing this agent into the workflow of employees from the perspective of giving and receiving feedback, we said, OK, you know what? Let's run some lunch and learns with the employee group that we were piloting with. Let's help them understand artificial intelligence, kind of talk down the specter. But then let's also run some co-creation sessions where they can participate and have a hand in actually affecting the outcome of the pilot. So we used our Smart Things canvas. We kind of looked at where they might get frustrated or where they would assess the intelligence. And then ultimately, we decided, hey, we're going to use this agent not only for the feedback use case, but other use cases in the future as well, so we can see which ones take off. So those are our 4 principles. We hope that they're helpful to everyone. Again, these are evolving. So whether you're an organization that's looking to implement this in your own workplace, or if you're a startup and you're looking to build a product that might be used by the workforce, hopefully these can help out. Thank you.
Thank you.